So, as some of you are coming in before you take your seats, come down and take a look at Rusty.
It's not rusty. I like it.
So I can talk to you about what it is that's scaring the hell out of firemen.
Besides fire and smoke?
Besides fire and smoke. Come and see what everybody's talking about.
All down.
Why the welding witch doctors, why corner rust, you know, you can put your fingers through, rust jacking in all the corners, bolts that are sheared through, material loss.
So,
Step on a tread, and these things will come with you. If you look at the back of your piece, very famous photograph of, on the back of your, of that is that fireman that down in Marlborough Street in Boston. And he saved himself by, with one hand, he got his hand on the ladder. But the woman died and her niece landed on her. But if you look at the picture, there's all kinds of fire escape debris coming down, killing Crush.
So the niece died too?
No, she survived. The fireman survived. That was a 4-story fall.
so if we ever had a wooden staircase involved, always fine, to walk on the edge where the supports are. Does that apply to this too?
Yeah, it's the same situation. We're telling you that the corners are the weak. The middle is not the weak part. The corners are. Look at all that rust inside there.
Because in a fire, we would stay off the middle of the stair and walk the
Sure,
wall.
yeah. But we're trying to tell you that they're supposed to have this fire escape look. If anybody wants to come and look at Rusty before you sit down, this shows you. And what he just did there is an example of just how much this little piece weighs. So you can imagine a fire escape collapse, how much that was. So, you know, the stringers hold the fire escape to the platform. Look at all the rust in here. Look at the original hardware. You get on a fire escape, you see how they're square head bolts. You shouldn't get, you actually.
You know it's old.
You know it's old. It's 75. Rivets are 100 plus years old. That's the first thing that they built fire escapes with, is the rivets. Then they went to square heads. Today it repairs hex heads. This is what a hex head looks like. Yeah, grade 5.
You know, do you use stainless steel?
You don't need it. It's not whether you use stainless steel or a grade 8 bolt. It's not really about that. What destroys the connection is its expansion. You're letting rust grow inside. If there's never going to be any rust inside the connection, you can use a stick to hold it together. A dowel. The key right now is that the separation is what eats the inside of a bolt. So bolts very rarely ever shear. You can't shear. I'll give you a hammer. You can try to shear a bolt. You can't. But you let rust eat it like a pencil down to the middle. So a lot of times, this is what's inside that connection you really can't see. So you see the head, you see the nuts, but the inside is that. Now when you step on that, that's what you're shearing. You're shearing 1/16. You're not trying to shear 3/8. You can't shear 3/8 with a stomp or with your weight. So you can't shear. I'll show you on the different load tests. You can load test with sandbags, water. But if you fully refurb the fire escape, there is no load test. We're not trying to sell load tests. We don't want you to spend money on load tests. We want you to spend money on refurbishing the fire escape so that you get another 25 to 50 years of life out of it. But on average, the swaps happen every 25 to 35 years. So 15 years to 30 years, you don't have to have a load test. So in lieu of a load test, you can refurbish your fire escape. That's called other evidence of strength. But it doesn't say that in IBC. It says that in NFPA though. So sometimes you have to overlap the codes to help you understand what's the best buck for the client. And again, this is steel. You guys got to realize when you go to wood, it's a whole different animal. So as you mentioned, the Pittsburgh guys were mentioning that a fire escape that was just certified that was wood collapsed a month later. Why? Because the guy was giving you an opinion affidavit. And this is the disclaimer, it says, to the best of my information, knowledge, and belief, and opinion, the fire escape is in conformity with the Mass Building Code, which means what?
Nobody wants to come in. He doesn't get
And how much you collect? Unless you have a 25-point questionnaire. But the key is that because it says very clear, the fire escape needs to be inspected and or load tested and or tested. If I also pull up the code for for the IBC, and I believe it says fire escape shall be examined and or tested. All right. What's the word tested? Well, it doesn't say it anywhere. You have to go back to NFPA, which says the authority having jurisdiction shall accept by load test or other evidence of strength. That was all work.
Talking about the internal rust, what internal rust, is not the issue.
Orange.
But you're basically that's where the shape of things.
The mayor said he had.
Yeah, the internal rust is always this. This is internal rust. See all that rust in there?
Oh, you come in, you got my house.
Then you leave it long enough, you go in there, and you can actually. See over here, this
Oh, yeah.
any professional that architect or engineer looking at this, he doesn't see that, he doesn't want to see that. And a lot of times, before they'll come out and inspect, they want you to paint it, so you can hide all of this, so it looks spectacularly black, so go back to the old straight paint. But I'm gonna show you how you guys are gonna be safe with these fire escapes, and what a load test is.
Now, did they change the flow or that's reconfiguration of space? It's kind of a sucky little line.
All right, so we're gonna talk about, we're gonna continue with the piece, this goes on for another hour and a half, right, till 2:30. And we'll talk about load testing, so we'll answer load test questions, but let's talk about how fire escapes were built, okay? Just so you can get an idea how safe it was in 1916, and why it's no longer safe in 2016, 2019, 100 years later. First of all, there was no 5-year rule, so unless the building department, because you know how many of these buildings for 100 years remodeled their bathrooms, remodeled their kitchens, remodeled their roofs, redid all kinds of things inside? Guess what was never asked of them? For 100 years, not just in Boston, nationwide, LA has never had a 5-year rule on any of their fire escapes. And we have an office in LA. They only have a 1 year. And you know what the 1 year inspection is? Does the ladder come down? You know, the ladder, it's only to inspect the ladders. What about the rest of the 10 stories? Chicago. No 5-year rule in Chicago. It's only now that the IFC is starting to kick in that the 5-year rule is coming in, but then they have to adopt it. So it came out in 2012. Where did I find out? I was teaching a class in Utah. And I was, you know, doing the same thing, blah, 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 blah. And all of a sudden, somebody in the room said, hey, do you know the IFC has a 5-year rule? I said, no. But then, it came out in 2012, but it wasn't adopted by every state. Then when the states adopted it, then the cities needed to adopt it with any amendments.
We've had it in Massachusetts by either amendment or at least back to the 5th. Well,
The
that's
IFC?
IBC.
No, I know, I don't know. Oh my God, you guys have it. Look at the back of your fire. Look at this picture. Let me tell you, when the 5-year rule came into play, you're one of the few cities because of this. This happened in 1973, right? This is in Marlborough Street, the collapse. This won a Pulitzer Prize. If you want, take this and put this on your board. And then when somebody wants to really downplay fire escapes, look at this all the time. This fireman saved himself. You guys know the story, right? This fireman saved himself by hanging on the ladder with one hand. She died. And the niece landed on her. They just celebrated 40 years or something just recently, or 45 years with this guy. Okay? And you know what the city of Boston did back then? They implemented the 5-year rule in the IBC, which was probably the first in the nation.
Well, there wasn't IBC back then, so there was BOCA, building officials and code administrators. But we had mass amendments, and I don't remember if it was an amendment, or if it was right out of BOCA. But we've had it, I'm going back to early 90s, late 80s actually, that I know we had that.
Yeah. So the 5-year rule is you're one of the few states that the building department has a 5-year rule, but it was an amendment by the state. It wasn't a national code. There's no national code. As a matter of fact, when you go in the IBC now and you look on the fire escape examination, it says CIFC.
Well, there's also an international existing building code. We cover a lot of fire escape issues.
Primarily, the biggest one that's covered, a lot of times cited in Massachusetts is gonna be the IBC. But while you have it here, you have the existing building code reference number, because some of you guys wanna put that down if you wanna write it down.
I do. One from the IBC.
2001, right?
Well, maintain means of egress is 33%.2, maintenance of means of egress,
It actually, so.
Yeah.
I was thinking public safe during construction.
It's actually three sections.
I gave you the section already.
Yeah, 1001.3.2, Craig.
That's the
Point three.
IBC. So the IEBC, there's three sections. It's 405, 805, 3121, and a means of egress, excuse me, which is 1401.6.11.
But it's to build them or just to maintain them? This is all.
This is existing building code, but it does reference,
Fire
new it's,
New
Yeah.
fire escapes in all buildings.
right.
Yeah,
But
yeah. That's how to build them.
it does, well, it tells you how to build them.
No, great. 42,
The maintenance
A little
is
bit.
in 1001.3.1 and .3.2.
correct.
Those are added subsections. They aren't in the main, they aren't in the IBC. It's an amendment to the IBC.
Because in the rest of the country, they took it out of IBC, gave it to IFC, but in Massachusetts, it goes back to IBC.
Correct.
Okay? So guys, I'm not a code specialist, but I get enough code people inside the room that they will basically tell you, but primarily, whenever you're writing a violation, it's 1001.3 or it's 1104.16, I believe. It's on there, it's right inside your book. The actual code is right there, inside the book. 1104.16.5.1. Okay, for the IFC. So now let's talk about this. Let's talk about load testing. This is live load testing. You know what live load testing is? Put live people on it. So live people could be the tenants, live people could be the window washer, the live people could be the firemen who are coming in, live people could be EMTs coming in to do some sort of emergency evacuation, right? But let's talk about what a typical platform. See this platform right up here? 5x5? How do you build them? 100 pounds per square foot. So a 5x5 platform, if I was gonna build it, it's 5 times 5 equals 25 times 100 is 2,500 pounds. All right? So 2,500 pounds, I got a 5x5 platform just like this, and I've got 10 tenants in there. They all weigh 150 pounds. It's a very skinny, it's a health club. I got 10 of them coming out onto this 5x5. 10 times 150 is how much? 1,500 pounds. How much more can this platform take?
1,000 pounds.
So they're gonna do the piggyback. But let's just start with the first 10 guys. 10 guys out. Can I get 10 guys into a 5x5?
No.
So let's throw those people out. They somehow get in and get out of the fire escape. The firemen show up. I got 200-pound guys with 100 pounds of gear. So they're 300 pounds. And I take 5 of them. Can I get 5 firemen at 300 pounds apiece into a 5x5?
If all the SCBA's are pointing out.
Depends upon where the railings are.
Hit a ball hit the
No,
bike.
because that's confined space training. You know,
So with that, you're looking at 5 times 3 is 1,500 pounds. How much more pounds do we have available for those guys? 1,000 pounds. So when we built these, you know what they were built for? You had to be 2 feet square, 6 feet, 10 feet tall, okay? In order to just match the building code for it to hit 2,500 pounds. So this is the kind of things you have to look for. So we're not bringing elephants on this. It can't, the amount of tenants and firemen that could ever be physically on a fire escape platform, there's still 1,000 plus beyond. So that should have been built for 50 a square foot or 60 a square foot. Sound familiar in some of your other construction? Kitchens have certain, decks have certain. £100, residential or commercial, £100. So in 1916, did anybody fear getting on these metal behemoths?
No.
Would you fear getting on this? I'm good old rusty today.
All that-
Knowing everything that you see here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm good with Rossi.
So what happens is, this is what's happening, without the 5-year rule, without these things getting refurbished, because as soon as I refurbish rusty, it will do that. So every connection I can change the bolt, 1/2-inch bolts for the major structural, 3/8 bolts for all the treads and such, and then into the building. 2 questions, how do you verify a building that's either 8 inches deep, 12 inches deep, 24 inches deep? How do you verify that? Through the load test, right? Or, as it says in the NFPA, the authority having jurisdiction shall accept by load test or other evidence of strength. Can I leave a connection into the building or a through bolt into the building, but let's say a cement connection, which is usually they're buried 8 to 12 inches deep. They go through the first veneer, and the real structure is behind here, right? Can I put an epoxy bolt next to that? 4 to 6 inches away from the original connection? Would that satisfy you?
Engineer said.
Again, it's engineered, it's putting in a 5/8 or a 3/4 Hilti epoxy into the building, and they've done test borings to make sure that that it properly will adhere to the inside. Otherwise, can we put another through bolt plate and put a plate on the inside? But we're trying to avoid disturbing these 100-year-old facades.
Right, because what's the structural integrity of what you're attaching?
Correct.
Right, we do a poll test on a percentage of ones.
Yeah, so a lot of times they do pull tests, but that's so that we don't have, you open up a can of worms, because sometimes you can open up a can of worms on these, but is that other evidence of strength? We put off load testing for the next 15 to 25 years as long as the person properly maintains it. And if you put 35 to 50-year paintable silicone in every one of these connections before you put it together, verified by a structural engineer or a registered architect, and he signs one of these 25-point affidavits, right? Feel a little bit better? Because when he shows up in court and he lied on an affidavit, who wins?
The best lawyer.
But otherwise, you bring one of those to the best of my information, knowledge, and belief, the authority having jurisdiction, to the best information, knowledge, and belief, the fire escape is in conformity with the Mass Building Code. That's your current Boston certificate, which a lot of you might just copy off the website, right off the state.
That's actually pretty standard fare for an architect or an engineer to put on anything.
Yep, that's called the golden parachute. They don't give that to any fireman, by the way, in case you need a golden parachute. It's only for architects and engineers. But if you can eliminate that concern by refurbishing the entire structure with new fasteners, oversight by design professional, others acceptable to the building official, and it's done every 5 years, how comfortable are you to let your men back on this over the next 5 to 10 years? And with one of these tags on it, white or green, or white with green, right? And it says what? Passed.
We should have the data.
And it always has a date, yeah, it has dates, even the name of the person who's certified, because in case something goes wrong, what do you want to know? Who signed on it? Oh, is it inspected by Bob Miller Inspections. Very important information, permanently attached to all fire escape structures 7 to 10 feet off the ground. So when you're coming down a smoky alleyway and you see one of these tags, and the fire escape stairs is down, what can you do if there's a baby and a woman out a window?
Or at least read
If
the
it's at yellow, you may want to consider, but at least the yellow is telling you that there's been some functionality brought to that system. It's not repaired. You know how I make it functional? See all this rust in that connection there, or that clip right there? Sometimes you don't have to remove. That's the certification process. But I can pop that bolt, put in a brand new bolt temporarily. Now she's structurally sound. She's functional. She's not certifiable because I've left rust inside the connection, but that's to be done over time. So can fire escapes that are red go to yellow status and meet the building department and fire department's requirements? The answer is yes. Can it then proceed to a white over time, whether you give them 30 days, 60 days, 90 days based on money? The answer is yes. If it's a train wreck, can it be mothballed and then scaffolded and be brought into the mix? Maybe. Maybe.
Maybe.
but that's what Rusty is all about here. So, everybody understand, in 1915, these were built for circuses and elephants and all kinds of crazy things. Sadly, for 100 years, there's been no 5-year verification process, but you do have those for batteries, sprinklers. You guys have all these inspections. So can you add it to the checklist? I think that sprinkler system certificates should not be issued or accepted by any city if there's a fire escape on the outside. It should be part of it. And they're not gonna order an inspection test. They're just saying, hey, here's my sprinkler test, the sprinkler's all great. Here's a copy of a 3-year-old affidavit that still has 2 more years on it. What? You create triggers on other things, like your health department throws everybody out of a building. Before you let anybody back in the building, what do you need to verify in order to have a compliant building that you're allowed to rent it out? What is it? 2 means of egress. So you took them out because of cockroaches and rats and whatever, whatever the situation may be. But now to get back in, there's a checklist of items, and that includes, let's say I do have one. There's my front stair, there's my back stair. I know. Where's the affidavit for that wood or steel structure on the back of your building? But you guys just cited me for cockroaches. I know. Yeah, we took care of the cockroaches. Now, before we can let them back in, we need the wood structure, the metal structure certified. So we're not going to try to change code, we're not going to try, but if you can find triggers or piggyback smoke detectors. A smoke detector is the last thing you need signed off before you get in a residential or commercial building. Tie an affidavit to it, a fire escape affidavit. It's a checklist item. Give me your smoke. Everything looks great. I need a copy of your affidavit. You're not ordering one, you're asking for one, because if the alarm goes off, guess where I go? To the first or the second means of egress. I don't have one. Okay, now it's your choice. You're either gonna sign off the smoke and say, I'll give you 30 days to get that in compliance, or you may not. It's up to you. But now you piggyback that, and now you have an open violation, but then you talk with your counterpart in the building and say, hey, violate this guy. So it stays open for you for a while, and even if the building department ignores it, it's an open ticket on your end.
Violate this guy. That's easy.
Sometimes I don't speak right, but I'm trying to bang out the same message. So, questions now so far, because we're gonna see where you guys would like to take the rest of the questions, because this is great information on here that I'm gonna go over this book. But let's open it up to questions. What kind of questions we have so far?
So from what you're saying, it sounds like you're trying to avoid load testing unless they're adamant that what they have is fine and they refuse to do any actual work to do.
Sure. Give me $5,000-$10,000 and I'll hang out for a couple of days at your building, okay? And I'll drag sandbags around. I got videotape of me sandbagging a fire escape. You know how many? I've done load tests all over the country. In my entire life, in load testing since 1971. That's how long I've been in the business. I've not done more than half a dozen load tests. And I actually did a load test in Cambridge, and the only reason I was doing a building for Harvard, the only reason I did the Harvard load test was not because they didn't pay for it. I said, can I load test your fire escape free of charge, please? Even though I fixed it, I just needed footage of 7 men dragging 50-pound sandbags up the whole thing, and then you cascade it down. And it's a circus, but I videotaped it all for what reason? So you guys can see it. And whether we're doing sandbags, water bags, plates, or cables, because you know what? If I have a 10-story building, you think I want to put 3,000 pounds up there, or do I put 3,000 pounds on the ground? Run a cable through, spread the load upstairs, put in a load cell, and just lift the thing off the ground 1/4 inch.
Never fall down.
And then if it goes, oh, stop, because the weight is down here. You don't want the weight coming down. So what is a load test? It's a variation of every structure with an engineer saying, how am I going to load test this platform? So you actually load test like this. You don't load test this whole thing with all kinds of weight. You load test from this bracket to this bracket, or from this bracket to this bracket. Do the caps and you put so much weight there. Stop. Load test that. Stop. This bracket to this bracket holds a staircase, so you have to load the staircase accordingly. But it's from this bracket to this bracket. You see how weird this thing is? $5, $10, $15,000. Thank you very much. Can I buy some paint and bolts with that? And then put off load testing for the next, because you have to do this every 5 years. It's not load test once. Every 5 years, you gotta give me $10, $15, $20,000. And you know what it looks like when it's a positive result? You know what a negative result is?
Boom.
Still gotta do it anyway.
Ouch.
We did a job in Portland, Oregon.
Another job.
Guess what passed? The fire escape. Guess what failed? The wall.
Pull it off the wall.
And they had to, because the wall, it's a 100-year-old building. The fire escape passed the load test, but the wall, and it caused all kinds of problems. But also in Portland, and we worked with a fireman there for over 10 years. They've got one of the best programs. You want to go steal a program? Go to Portland, Oregon Fire Escapes, and they have it on their website. You go and the entire program that I put together for them, including the questionnaire. But the building department, was it the building or the fire? It was the building department got involved. The engineer of record got some wind that is something about the safety factor of 2. He determined that to be that you shouldn't load test this fire escape that you built to 100. You should load test it at 200. So your F-150 1-ton truck should be always tested with 2 tons of sand. Guess what's breaking out there? Not the fire escape. The walls are like, and we've written letters, and it's just insanity. Because every now and then somebody else is driving the bus. This is pretty simple. So if this takes, you have to be 2 feet square, 10 feet tall, over 600 pounds a person. They want you to be 20 feet tall, 1,200 pounds, 2 feet square, in order to meet their requirements. And it was never built for that. So common sense doesn't always prevail. Talking about permits? Fire escapes. Painted, I need a permit?
No,
Oh, that's good. EPA renovator's license?
only if you're disturbing.
Do I need to someone to scrape and paint this thing? Do I need an EPA renovator's license?
Yes.
So it means a piece of plastic on the ground, 20 feet. I get to wear my little white suit, my little plastic gloves, little masky,
Depends what I'll
and
tell you, you might
any
be-
blood draws?
You might be closing the whole thing.
No. So by the way, the EPA and the OSHA don't comply with each other because OSHA wants me to take blood draws if I touch anything with lead. EPA says, no, you can scrape with little maskies and, so that's the EPA. So when you scrape and paint these fire escapes, it's lead. Okay, can I weld on this? Nope. Most fire escapes are bolted, so you can shock weld, field install. Can you do that? That's agree, that's gonna do all those things, right? Let's talk about, I'm gonna change a bolt. I'll change this bolt, I need a permit?
No.
Oh, thank God, they created a great category for the witch doctors. What's it called?
Ordinary repair.
General maintenance, painting and changing a bolt, and then when I show up with these, what don't I need? I don't need a fire wash, because I'm doing
There you go.
general repair. In Boston now, they said, oh, you know why those 2 firemen died? Because of these.
Welding's different though, that might be special inspection.
Oh, special inspection, that's a great one. Never heard of it, never done it, never needed it, doesn't exist.
They didn't make me do it in that time.
We just had a welding happening at City Hall on one of the exterior rails. They had to get a hot works permit from us.
Well, I know, Boston right now, because of the 2 firemen that died, you can't light a torch unless you have the special training, you know, for the, which is great. But they, you know what, the reason why they did it because of fire escapes. They said, everybody's gonna have a hot permit. And I called up, I said, it has nothing to do with these welding rods. Guys, the fire escapes are not gonna be fixed because of this hot permit thing now. Because you're never supposed to weld this anyway, so. If anybody has any connections in the Boston fire, the hot work permit issue is not how we fix fire escapes. Okay, but now let's get to this, I'm still on the permit process. Do I need a permit to change a bolt? Do I need a permit to paint this thing?
No.
Do I need to have design professional put together a documentation, because your code says an affidavit, and a document will be given to you, what do you call it, it's right here. An affidavit, submit an affidavit or a report to the city official. So that's when you pass. Do you guys demand the report when you fail?
To work on it, yeah, you're gonna have to evaluate it.
Well, I know
Existing building code.
nobody does. Welding witch doctors, their report is, you know, they go buy a welding box of rods. What are you talking about? So because it's in the code, sometimes you're looking for things in the code. So it says here that, you know, you must submit a report or affidavit. So if a fire escape gets violated, do you want it repaired or you want the report?
So to work on it, you need a permit.
No, you don't.
You if you're welding.
I'm not welding.
Yeah, so then.
Well, who's to say that it's not and there has to be some sort of control here. Is that a rated assembly, is that a grade? Do we have grade 8 bolts, grade 5 bolts? Do we have things that we have to move?
Well, the building, the inspector, the design professional will tell you, but the norm is grade 5 on these,
All
not
right,
grade 8.
I'll have the design
It's not gonna tell us
professional
unless we
to
get a
give me a
permit.
plan.
Well, that's what I'm saying, I'm trying to push it back to your thing here, it
Well, as
says,
soon as you ask for something, you have to have some sort of control on that. So if you're asking for some sort of, work or some sort of a engineering report, the very next thing would be if there's deficiency found, you would be having that, you'd be having a permit.
and is that subject to the code requires it? I'm asking you for, these guys need help.
Yes.
You're saying that here's a violation, I don't like the look of your fire escape, it's a
And
5-year.
I want to document.
And I want either an affidavit that says it's certified through low test or whatever it means, or, no, she failed. I'm gonna get an ornamental guy on it as soon as possible, what do you say? Stop,
Get an engineer, design professional, architect, or an engineer.
because the code says so.
Right, give me some sort of evaluation on this.
Report back to
And then
you.
we're gonna move forward. I'm not sure if we're gonna be comparing this to a general repair, or if this is actually gonna be a full-blown building permit.
Which could trigger building permit. So who triggers the building permit? The architect and the ornamental guy or the welding witch doctor? You think he's gonna trigger a permit? But like he just says, depending on the magnitude of the report, because I want to report whether you fail or pass from a design professional or others acceptable to the building official, which means it's been sitting in the code all the time. And how many of these failed reports have you guys been getting? Raise your hand the last time you got a failed report with some sort of guides of some sort.
I think we could-
Never, right?
On
If they
just
fail.
fire escapes?
On a fire escape, that's something that it failed.
Yeah, not on a fire escape.
Never, right? But yet it's in the code. They're supposed to give you one or the other. It passed is your affidavit according to whatever guidelines, low test, or that simple document from the city of Boston, or it failed. Have your design professional, others acceptable to the building official, submit a report, the deficiency report to the city official. From there, they'll determine whether this is gonna fall onto routine maintenance or it's gonna require a permit. A lot of times what triggers a permit is as soon as I penetrate the wall, right? As soon as you penetrate the wall, it triggers a permit. That's one of the big pieces, especially down in Philadelphia. You can do anything you want to a fire escape, it's routine maintenance, as soon as you penetrate the wall, they want design drawings, stamped, explaining, and that means there's an investigation inside, some things are gonna open up, and that, because that triggers a permit, that means that something opens and closes.
That would be for a new connection to a wall, not, I presume that wouldn't be just repairing an existing connection.
If you
Like
open, if you're just,
remortaring around a connection.
right, that's routine
That's ordinary
repair.
repair.
You know, you start making a whole new attachment into the building, triggers a permit.
When you go there and you see they're rebuilding the whole thing and they say it's regular repair, it's not regular. Yeah, I mean, it's one of them once you drive up and you say, I don't think so. Or, hey, looking good.
I know what you're saying here, but that's not the norm here. So you need to, they're looking at, for the state to give some guidance on that and say, here's guidelines, here's the 5 steps to certifying your fire escape. and it certifies, here's the 5 steps to certifying a fire escape that needs repairs. And they're not always the same, but the process is gonna be the same to get there, and that is a design professional is in the middle of it somewhere. Because in some cases, even without building inspector viewing, what's gonna happen, the engineer is the eyeballs for you. He's signing something. And the question is, do you want him to sign what we call the golden parachute letter, or do you want him to fill out a 25-point question? Okay? As you see on here, examples of how fire escapes are built, how they're tied into the buildings. Treads. You know what hasn't changed in 100 years? How fire escapes are built. There's been no innovation, no changes, because in 1915, 1916, when they started building them, about 10 years later they said, you know what? And they started the whole process of bringing them inside. Because you know who was watching these on the outside? No one. You know who was fixing these on the outside? No one. And they said, so that's why now no new fire escapes on the exterior of a building for that reason. So that's been happening since 1925, 1935. They said, no. And they, you know what they were expecting in a lot of these buildings that you guys have been holding together with bubble gum and duct tape and what else? Zip ties.
Bungee cords.
Bungee cords. These things are not supposed to have lasted this 100 to 150 years. They're supposed to be all down. Not expecting people to, you know, create such a longevity to some of these structures, and fire escapes went right along with them, with a bastard child of egress, out of sight, out of mind. You want to count fire escapes in your town, you might as well count the homeless. Exactly how many fire escapes you have and exactly how many homeless you have. You're like, I don't have an exact count. By the way, all exterior steel or wooden stairways, balconies, bridges.
I'm back, I'm not just trying to be totally ignoring it, I actually got back to the 5th edition of the code, and I found the same statement I shared with you, it's in our code now, was in the 5th edition, which that was in the late 80s, early 90s. So we've had it that long.
Yeah, but it was a
I'm trying to go back
amendment.
to the 4th, which is more into the 8th edition, or more into the
Yeah.
1980s. deeper.
Yep. And again, it happened after that collapse, that you had the 5-year rule come into play. All right, so with that, you guys have all the, we talked about the cantilevers, right? We talked about the cantilevers and how they need to have a release mechanism on them. Because what happens on a properly balanced cantilever, you know what the law says? You're supposed to walk out 2 to 3 steps, activate the fire escape. It goes down while you hold on, hits the ground, and then you get off. But it's supposed to stay down. What do most of these cantilevers do? They go back up. So they're improperly balanced. The release mechanism allows you to have a single action requiring no special knowledge, which is just this bar in your way, and any idiot will run right through it, push it aside, and it drops, it hits the ground. But if it's got a chain on it, it becomes that issue about the child, the parent, and when you are a parent and you're taking a child down the fire escape, you put them in front of you or behind you?
Depends if you're going down forward or backward.
You're going down forward, right? You bring the child behind you, right? And then as soon as you step off the fire escape that's improperly balanced, the cantilever, and you have a 50-pound child.
Trench.
Joey, where'd you go?
So, I'm gonna go through a couple of things. The affidavits. I'm gonna go over a couple of questions here. And just so you guys know, if you look on the back of your pages, there's we're working with the state of California right now. They have a 5-year and a 1-year. Whether or not Massachusetts wants to adopt the 1-year, I think it's important to do the 1 year. But the 5-year and my 5 year is the same. We helped San Jose put this together. We're helping Oakland, who had that ghost fire, do this. LA has only done 1 years, and they've never had this questionnaire. And I've been there for over 10 years. And you know how many people they have associated with a fire protection for the entire city of LA? Without just the fire protection, just handling the fire escape affidavit? Reg 4? One guy. He was there for 10 years, he left, he's got another guy that came in on a part-time basis. So, every fire escape in LA has now been 5-year inspected. Every single one. A handful may have had a 5-year because there was an architect there, did something, but it was usually triggered by a permit.
Erosion out there.
A lot of them are galvanized. And so, but there is some older fire escapes that weren't galvanized, but they haven't been touched for 75 to 100 years. I know this because we inspect from San Francisco all the way down to, but there's never been a 1 year. So the 1 years, what we did in the state of California is because of the lawsuit that's happening in LA, we created a 1 year that is it doesn't let the 1 year people who have less knowledge, they test the fire escape. So what this questionnaire is, if you read it, it basically says, hey, you fire protection guy, ornamental guy, somebody with a lesser license, you went to the roof and you acted like a fireman, you went up and over, you didn't see anything because it already has to have a 5 year. The first question on the thing is, does it have a 5 year? So you can test it every year. So you went up and over the hoop ladder, was it shaky, did it move? When you went down and you looked at all the windows and all the doors, did they all look, were they smashed, duct tape closed or something? Because that's what the questions are. Does it look safe? Does it look like anything out of the order? So it's asking for your opinion. This is an opinion affidavit, a 1 year's opinion affidavit. And you went all the way down to the ground, and whether you had a drop ladder, or whether you had a cantilever, or you had something that got you to grade and then out to a public way, which means you're gonna check for boxes, locks, gates, and all these other things. That's what the 1 year should be. They do it in San Francisco, they do a 1 year and a 5 year. They do it in Oakland, a 1 and a 5. But LA never did a 5. They just do a 1. And once you check the ladder only. So here's the 1 year. Take a look at the 5. Okay, the 5 is the same thing. Look at all the questions on the 5. The questions on the 5 is every component. So think about this. If you read these questions, whether it's here, and you can go to the National Firescape Association.org. This is a standard download, has no name on it. These 25 questions is free. You can just click it, and it's free. Any architect, any engineer, it's not copywritten. This is similar to Mercedes. You know who invented the airbag? Mercedes. You know who patented the airbag? Nobody. Mercedes, they asked, why did you patent the airbag? He said, Mercedes says, it was too important for us to be the only car company to have an airbag.
What was
They
the
go,
depth of their seatbelts, the 3-point restraint? Good job. Same exact thing.
so same thing here? Should this be copywritten? For what? So whenever you got some architect, some engineer that throws the diploma at your head, that he's been in the business for 40 years, you say, that's great. And this document is not a US certified or a state certified document, blah, blah, blah. I said, dude, then just copy the questions onto your letterhead and answer them and if you read my questions, what are they? On the treads, is there any rust, internal rust on the tread connections? Not about this, we already have a question for surface rust. On the platform where it ties into the corner, is there any internal surface rust that you can visually see with the eye? You can see it because it bulges, right? You guys saw it. You guys are all down here around Rusty, right? Is there any bolts that are original to the fire escape requiring a load test? So you want to keep your squares, you love your square bolts? Great. What do you say? Test it.
Might be good, might be good.
Might be better to build it.
And so load test it because right now you guys want, you don't want, I can't give you guarantees that you don't want insurance, you want assurance, right? And what's an assurance? A load test. Because guess who goes, when we go to court, right? And there's somebody that got hurt on a fire escape. Let me show you how quickly it becomes an act of God. You wrote a violation, we load tested the fire escape, she passed, 3 years later there's a collapse. There's an investigation, and the fire escape, they identify something on the fire escape. But on the day we tested it, guess what didn't fail? It didn't fail. Now, I get these crazy situations where people say, load test it. Okay, this happened to me in Yale University. They brought me down, and I'm sure they have some good engineers in Yale University. And we were doing a theater down there, a very famous old theater there, and they had to do the fire escape. So their engineer said, I want you to load test the fire escape, fix what breaks, and then paint it. I said, oh, that makes sense. How about if we do it the other way around? How about if we do a pre-load test evaluation, which is the 25-point questionnaire,
Be a little safer.
fix it, and then, if you're leaving anything behind, it's called an integrated load test. Because if I change all the treads with new bolts, but not the platform, what's that called? Integrated load test. I load test the platform because you wanted to keep your nice squares for historical reasons, but on the treads, if I put on all brand new bolts, do I need to load test that? No. But I've had people that say, hey, I know there's rust in there, I want you to load test it. Says, no, you load test it. Because you know what a pass looks like.
I failed as you broke their load.
Yeah, a fail is a pile of something on the ground that they want me to put
You
back.
gotta fix it, man. I think I was before.
Nice job. Why did you do that?
And why'd you do that? It wasn't like that an hour ago.
You broke my fire escape.
You broke my fire escape.
Broke my
Now, that
wall.
Oregon one, that we broke the wall, I said, thank you. Because you know what the first thing I told the owner? I said to the owner, sue the city. Because their 200-year rule doesn't make sense and it damaged your building. Because where does it say in the code that it's gotta be 200? There's an opinion that due to the the 2 times factor, the safety factor of 2, some guy read it wrong.
That's already in there with the 100 pounds per square foot.
And let's get everybody's 1-ton trucks in here and let's load it with 2 tons of sand. See how your shocks are doing. And your tires. Because if that applies for fire escape, it should apply to everything else. What's your load rating on a rail? On glass, on it, just double it. Because right now, we just want to be extra safe in Oregon.
Code plus.
Code plus, that's what it's called. That's it. I'm gonna steal that one. We're in a place where now it's gonna be code plus. You can't just make this stuff up. So, the key right now with this is, in regards to these 1 year and these 5 years, is that currently in Massachusetts, there is no standard, typical industry standard questionnaire that asks you simple questions that would put an engineer and an architect's feet to the fire of liability. But as soon as I load test it, guess who doesn't go to court? I'll never go to court. The city official will never go to court. The owner will never go to court, even though there was something happened. But if all of a sudden during the examination of that court date, they find that the guy signed a false affidavit, ooh, now we got something. As soon as you lie on an affidavit that says, there's an actual box that says, is there any internal rust on the treads? And you said, no. Well, we've got rust inside these treads. You created a false document. That's where you get it. So load testing.
It was okay the day you did it.
Yeah, but but if you can prove that it was a false document, you guys got nothing but toilet paper after certifications coming down the pike, correct? A lot of these, that, you said, I think it was the wood one, right? The guy signs it one day and a month later, the EMT falls right through it,
Yeah.
right? There's questionnaires.
Yep. How did you know?
So, the one thing that we do is whenever we have any certification where it's an opinion affidavit, we always ask for a disclaimer of liability. So much so that, who's also stepping into the game? Insurance companies. Insurance companies are stepping into the game because they're saying, hey, if you guys are letting these bogus certificates come through without load test, even though it's clearly written in the code, if you guys are allowing these things, you know what we're gonna do to the client? We're not gonna pay this bill. And that's when everybody starts freaking out, then the news media gets into it, how could you, what should you, and and all these different things going on. But right now, insurance companies are stepping in because they've paid over $100 million. I had a guy in New York that, he was an elevator inspection guy, was using the fire escape on the outside to get to the roof. A small platform like this, about 2 by 2 fell, 3 by 3 fell, he only fell 10 feet. A girl in New York City, she was visiting her friend, wasn't even her own building, but the only way to get to the roof deck, the illegal roof deck with lighting, strung by, you know, wiring and a roof hatch with a shaky ladder through the thing, but she used the fire escape. And when it came over the roof, it only extended 9 inches above the roof line. And she had a couple of beers, $35 million she got. She's also paraplegic because she fell,
It's not worth the money.
smashed and crashed a couple floors down, but they took 10 million out. They only gave her 25 because she had 2 beers. Got it? So what's the insurance company starting to say? They're starting to say, what? Where's the real affidavit? So you can give, you know, to the best, you know, the fire safety conformity with the Mass Building Code, you know, the golden parachute letters, but the insurance companies are starting to require now that there be more teeth if the code says to do that. So right now, your code says, here's your violation, bring me a certificate that I'm going to accept because you actually passed load test or other evidence of strength, or bring me a document that says there's a plan to fix this, so I can determine whether or not it's routine maintenance that's going to go to a load test, or it's going to be full refurb, which then I'm going to trigger a permit. And guess who's going to thank you for it?
If nobody gets hurt, nobody gets thanked.
No.
So, some more questions. Let's open it up to more questions, because here's what you should be getting if fire escape failed. This is an action plan.